Hi, this is Mike, and welcome back to 5 Minutes of Fantasy Sports. So, what I want to look at today is kind of some end game stuff. If you're looking up fantasy sports stuff, you're probably still in the playoffs for your league. Oops, I just moved the wrong thing here. So, I want to show you first off to double check when your league actually starts. The playoffs, and then secondly, show you maybe since we only have a few weeks left, which players, if any, you should keep, or which players you should try to trade since the trade deadline is coming up. So I'm in my league here on Yahoo. I'm going to click over to the right side on settings, and I want to check when my playoffs start. So if you scroll down, you'll see down one of the options is playoffs. It says 6 teams. It says week 19, 20, and 21. So my league actually ends with week 21. So the weeks we want to focus in on are 19, 20, and 21, at least in my league. You want to do this in your own league and double check when your playoffs start as well. Hopefully you're on track to make the playoffs. If not, you need to do anything you can over the next 2 weeks to get there. So I'm in second place right now, so I'm feeling pretty confident I'll at least make the playoffs. It'd be nice to keep that bye in week 19 and not have to worry about it, but you want to plan for the worst and hope for the best. So one website I like to go to is this one here. It's called hashtagbasketball.com, and I have it pulled up already. And what it does, it gives you the schedule for certain weeks, and it shows you how many games are going to be played by the different teams. So next week, week 18 in Yahoo leagues, it's a 2 week week because of the All-Star break. You can see here that Friday and Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, there's no games. So starting on the 14th, there's 9 games, 7 games, 11 games, 5 games, and then there's a break. And then so basically you get 8 days of games instead of 7 days in a normal week. So anyway, we're going to skip over that week and take a look at week 19. And what we want to see is we want to look at the teams that actually have the least games. So if you have anyone on the Trailblazers, not that there's a lot of fantasy studs on the Trailblazers these days, but if you do have anyone on the Trailblazers, that first week, week 19 of my playoffs, I'm going to look to maybe trade that player or possibly drop them if they're not very good. So I do have a player that I just had added, or sorry, that was just traded to the Trailblazers, and that player is Josh Hart. So Josh Hart's been putting up decent numbers this season, but because he only has 2 games, I might look to move him. So that's one thing to consider. The rest of the teams that have 3 games, the Hawks, the Celtics, the Hornets, the Bulls, Mavericks, Nuggets, Pistons, Warriors, Clippers. There's a lot of teams here. I guess I might as well read the rest of them. Lakers, Pelicans, Knicks, 76ers, Suns, Spurs, Jazz, Wizards. They all have 3 games, and the teams I didn't mention will have 4. So the Raptors, actually, week 19, have 5 games. So you get an extra game there if you have any Raptors players. And there's some pretty good players on the Raptors. So one strategy, just looking at this, is to try to trade for one of the, not lower players on the Raptors, but maybe mid-level player if you have someone like Larry Nance. So what you can do is come back to your Yahoo League. I'm going to go to where it says players and click on that. I'm going to go to where the players tab is and click where it says status. You can actually find the team down if you scroll down. And I'm going to look at who they have on Toronto. And I'm going to look for a player that maybe I can trade for. So Larry Nance, he's in the 100, 150 range. We see Chris Boucher right here. He's ranked 150th. I could try trading for him. Scotty Barnes, OG, Siakam, Trent Jr. Trent Jr. has been on fire lately. And then Fred Van Fleet. Those are all options as well. So you can also switch this to the ranks just to see the ranks over 7, 14, 21 days. And we see, like I said, Gary Trent Jr. is the 3rd best player in the league over the last 7 days and the best player over the last day. So if you have a manager who's not paying attention, you can try trading Gary Trent Jr. for him. I'll do a trade real quick here. Gary Trent Jr. for Josh Hart. Sure, why not? Worst thing that can happen is they say no, right? All right, so that's one way to look at it. Just try to get what you can. I'll send it. Probably not going to hear an answer because this manager's in last, and he's probably not checking very often. All right, but you want to do the same thing for week 20. Taking a look at week 20, clicking a couple times. There's no teams with 2 games, so that's good. But you can see there's quite a few teams here with 3 games. You got the Celtics, the Nets, the Hornets, the Bulls, the Cavs, Pacers, Grizzlies, Bucks, Thunder, Sixers, Blazers, Kings, Raptors, Wizards. They all have 3 games. And then we have the other half of the league with 4 games. So really, you're not going to make a big difference here. We can see, let's see where Portland goes from. Portland goes from having 2 games to having 3 games. And then Portland goes from having 2 and 3 in week 21, which is the finals, to having 4 games finally. So let's check to see if there's any 5-game teams. So the finals in my league is week 21, and the Heat only have 2 games. So if you have any Heat players and you're in the same situation as me where the league ends in week 21, you're going to want to probably look ahead and trade if you can. Players you might want to add would be ones from these 4 start teams. So just keep that in mind. It's something to look at. Planning ahead, hopefully, for the playoffs will be helpful. If you can't get a trade done with anyone, you can always think about possibly, dropping or adding a player. If you have Jimmy Butler on the Heat, you're not going to drop him necessarily, but, you could drop him on Friday and pick up a player who plays on Saturday. Is there any back-to-back Saturday, Sunday? Doesn't look like it. But that's another option as well. Just try to add a game here and there. And, if you could do, I don't see anything popping up here. But, if you drop him on Friday, you could add someone from the Cavs. And, it's not Jimmy Butler, but if it's the end of your season, you want to try to get that extra game if you can. So something to consider if your playoffs are week 22, which some leagues are. We switched our leagues to end a little earlier to avoid teams resting their players for the playoffs. But if you have any Clippers, Kings, or Spurs in week 22, they're only playing 2 games. So it does make a difference. A game here, a game there. It's something worth looking into. So that's my advice for now. Look forward and try to make some trades. The trade deadlines in your leagues are probably coming up. If they're already passed, then you're kind of out of luck. You just have to decide who you want to add in the weeks. So that's all for today. Thanks, everyone. And I'll be back tomorrow.